Eric Nelson walked to his mailbox on a hot Tuesday afternoon. The sun beat down on his neck as he pulled out the stack of mail. Bills, advertisements, and more bills. He sighed as he flipped through them, but stopped when he saw his electricity bill. The amount due was nearly double what he normally paid. This can't be right, he muttered to himself. Eric was 62 years old, retired from his career as an electrical engineer, and lived alone in his modest home in the outskirts of Tucson. He was careful with money and always monitored his expenses. This bill didn't make sense. Inside his house, Eric sat at his kitchen table and spread out his past bills. For 3 months straight, his electricity usage had been climbing. At first, he blamed the desert heat. Arizona summers were brutal, and his air conditioning worked overtime. But looking at the pattern now, something seemed wrong. Eric opened his laptop and logged into his utility company account. As a former engineer, he appreciated that his power company had installed smart meters that tracked electricity usage by the hour. He downloaded his data and created a simple chart. What he found made his eyes narrow. Every week there were strange power spikes between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. when he was asleep and most appliances were off. These spikes happened 3 times a week, always on the same days, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. "Someone's stealing my power," Eric said to the empty room. The next day, Eric drove to the hardware store and bought a small security camera. He installed it carefully, hiding it under the eaves of his garage with a clear view of the outdoor power outlet. The camera connected to his phone, and he could watch the feed anytime. For 2 days, nothing happened. Then at 2:13 a.m. on Friday morning, his phone buzzed with an alert. Eric grabbed it and watched the live video feed with wide eyes. A woman was crouching by his garage wall. She wore shorts and a t-shirt, and her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail. Eric immediately recognized her as Karen Mitchell, his neighbor from 3 houses down. She was unwinding a long orange extension cord and plugging it into his outdoor outlet. Eric watched as she carefully ran the cord along the edge of his property, through a gap in the fence, across a short stretch of desert scrub, and behind her house. There, partially hidden by a row of tall cacti, sat a brand-new, expensive-looking all-terrain vehicle. Karen connected the cord to a charger attached to the ATV, checked that the charging light came on, then hurried back to her house. "Well, I'll be damned," Eric whispered. Over the next week, Eric recorded 3 more instances of Karen stealing his electricity. Each time she came in the early morning hours, always stayed just long enough to connect her ATV charger, and returned at dawn to remove the cord before anyone would notice. Eric did some quick calculations. Based on the ATV's battery size and charging requirements, he estimated Karen was stealing about $30 of electricity each month. Not a fortune, but it was the principle that bothered him. Plus, running extension cords that distance was a fire hazard. After gathering enough evidence, Eric decided to confront Karen directly. On Saturday morning, he saw her getting her mail and walked over. "Good morning, Karen," he said pleasantly. Karen looked up, her face instantly forming a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, hello. Eric, right?" "That's right. I wanted to talk to you about something important. I've noticed my electricity bill has been unusually high lately." Eric paused, giving her a chance to confess. Karen's expression didn't change. "That's too bad. Must be all this heat we've been having. Actually, I checked my usage patterns. There's been significant power being used from my outdoor outlet in the middle of the night. Specifically on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., Karen shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "How strange. Maybe you should call an electrician." "I also installed a security camera," Eric continued, holding up his phone to show her a clear image of her connecting the extension cord to his outlet. "This is from yesterday morning at 2:17 a.m. Karen's friendly expression vanished. Her face flushed red, and she crossed her arms tightly. "That's obviously not me. The image is too dark. You're making serious accusations based on some grainy video. That could be anyone." "Karen, I have multiple recordings, clear as day. It shows you running an extension cord to charge your new ATV. That's ridiculous," I charge my ATV at my sister's house. She has a special outlet for it. Karen's voice grew louder. You're just a bored old man looking to cause trouble in the neighborhood. If you keep spreading lies about me, I'll report you for harassment. With that, Karen turned and stormed back to her house, slamming her door shut. Eric stood there for a moment, surprised by her reaction. He had expected her to be embarrassed, maybe apologetic. He hadn't expected such aggressive denial in the face of clear evidence. That evening, Eric sat on his back porch with a glass of iced tea, thinking about what to do next. Movement caught his eye. In the growing darkness, he saw a figure slip along the edge of his property. It was Karen, wearing a dark hoodie despite the warm evening. She was checking out his outlets, walking an alternate route to avoid his camera. Eric sighed. Clearly, showing her the evidence hadn't worked. She wasn't going to stop stealing his electricity. She was just going to be more careful about it. As he watched her disappear around the corner of his house, an idea began to form in his mind. If Karen wouldn't respond to a reasonable conversation, perhaps she would respond to something else, something that would make it impossible for her to keep taking advantage of him. Eric smiled slightly as he went inside to his desk. He pulled out a notepad and began sketching a circuit diagram. After 40 years as an electrical engineer, he knew exactly how to solve this problem. He titled the page, Operation Circuit Justice, and began to work. By midnight, his plan was complete. It wasn't dangerous or illegal. It wouldn't hurt Karen or damage her property, but it would definitely stop her from stealing his electricity, and it would give him ironclad proof of what she was doing. Tomorrow, he would begin gathering the parts he needed. Karen Mitchell had no idea what was coming. Eric woke up early the next morning with a clear plan in mind. After his morning coffee, he drove to the hardware store and filled his cart with electrical supplies, a special GFCI outlet, a small weatherproof box, some wiring, a voltage regulator, and a few other components. The clerk raised an eyebrow at his purchases. Working on a big project? The clerk asked as he rang up the items. Just fixing a pest problem, Eric replied with a smile. Back at home, Eric cleared space on his workbench, in the garage, and laid out all his supplies. He hadn't felt this excited about a project since before retirement. His hands moved with the confidence of someone who had spent decades working with electrical systems. By lunchtime, he had assembled the basic framework of his device. The phone rang, interrupting his work. It was his daughter, Samantha. Hi, Dad, just checking in. How are things? Actually, I could use your help with something, Eric said. He explained the situation with Karen and his plan to stop her. You're kidding me, Samantha said. She's seriously stealing your electricity to charge her ATV and then denied it to your face? Exactly. I'm building a special circuit to handle it, but I could use your software expertise. Samantha was 34 and worked as a software developer in Phoenix. I'll come over this weekend, she promised. This is too good to miss. When Samantha arrived on Friday evening, she brought her laptop and a small box of electronic components. Eric showed her his progress on the circuit. It's simple but effective, he explained. When someone plugs into this outlet, it will look and act normal for about 10 seconds. Then it will gradually reduce the voltage to a trickle. Not enough to trip any safety systems, but not enough to charge anything either. Samantha nodded as she examined his work. Very nice, and completely safe, which is important. Of course, Eric agreed. I don't want to hurt anyone or damage property. I just want to stop the theft and collect evidence. They worked together all weekend. Samantha created a small app that would connect to the circuit via Wi-Fi and record exactly when the outlet was used and how much power was drawn. It would also send alerts to Eric's phone and save timestamped data that could be used as evidence. This is better than I imagined, Eric said as they tested the system late Sunday afternoon. When Karen plugs in, we'll know immediately. The app will record everything and the circuit will prevent any actual charging from happening. And I added a feature to capture screenshots from your security camera whenever the outlet is activated, Samantha added. So we'll have video evidence matched exactly to the power usage data. Before Samantha left on Sunday evening, they installed the modified outlet in place of the original one on the outside of Eric's garage. They made sure it looked completely normal. Eric also posted a small sign that read, "Notice. Electrical. Work in progress. Use of outlets by unauthorized persons is prohibited." "That gives her fair warning," Eric said, "and makes our setup completely legal." Samantha agreed. "I can't wait to see what happens." Eric didn't have to wait long. Nothing happened on Monday or Tuesday night, but at 2:38 a.m. on Wednesday, his phone buzzed with an alert. He sat up in bed, instantly awake, and opened the app Samantha had created. Someone was drawing power from the modified outlet. The security camera showed Karen, once again wearing a hoodie despite the warm night, plugging in her orange extension cord. Eric watched as she ran the cord along its usual path toward her house and ATV. The app showed the power flow start normally, then gradually decrease as the circuit did its job. Eric smiled as he watched the numbers drop to a minimal level, enough to make Karen's charger light up, but not enough to actually charge the battery. For the next hour, Eric watched through the security camera as Karen repeatedly checked her ATV charger, looking confused when the battery level didn't increase. She unplugged and replugged the cord several times. She even tried wiggling the plug in the outlet. Nothing helped. Eventually, Karen tried a different approach. She unplugged from the garage outlet and searched around Eric's property for another outdoor outlet. She found one near the back porch and plugged in there. Eric grinned. Samantha had thought of this possibility. They had modified all the outdoor outlets on his property. Within moments, the app showed the same pattern. Normal power for a few seconds, then a reduction to a useless trickle. Karen spent nearly an hour trying every outdoor outlet she could find. Each time, the result was the same. The security cameras caught her frustrated expression from multiple angles. Finally, around 4 a.m., she gave up and collected her extension cord. Eric saved all the data and video clips, then went back to sleep with a satisfied smile. The next day, Eric called Samantha. "It worked perfectly," he reported. "You should have seen her face when none of the outlets would charge her ATV." "Did she realize what was happening?" Samantha asked. "I don't think so. She seemed to think the outlets were broken or something, but now we have solid evidence. Time-stamped video matched with power usage data. It's irrefutable." "What are you going to do next?" "I'm going to give her one more chance to come clean," Eric said. "If she denies it again, I'll take the evidence to the homeowners association." On Saturday morning, Eric saw Karen working in her front yard. He walked over with a folder containing printouts of the evidence. "Hello, Karen," he said pleasantly. "I wanted to follow up on our conversation about my electricity." Karen straightened up from her flower bed, looking wary. "I told you to stop harassing me about that." "I understand you've been having trouble charging your ATV lately," Eric said calmly. Karen's eyes widened slightly before she controlled her expression. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do," Eric replied, opening the folder to show her a clear image of herself plugging into his outlet. "This is from Wednesday night at 2:38 a.m. I have similar images from every outlet you tried that night, along with data showing exactly how much power you attempted to draw each time." Karen's face went red. She glanced around quickly to see if any neighbors were watching. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice low. Eric closed the folder. "I want you to stop stealing my electricity, and I want you to pay for what you've already taken." Karen crossed her arms. "And if I don't?" "Then I'll take this evidence to the homeowners association on Monday," Eric said simply. "And if they don't act, I'll take it to the police. Power theft is illegal, Karen." For a moment, Karen seemed ready to argue further. Then her shoulders slumped slightly. "How much do you want?" Eric looked at Karen standing in her front yard. Her question hung in the air between them. How much did he want as payment for the stolen electricity? "I calculated it," Eric said, pulling a paper from his folder. "Based on your ATV's battery capacity and how often you charged it, you've taken about $90 worth of power over the past 3 months." Karen's eyes widened. $90? That's ridiculous. It can't be that much to charge an ATV. "It adds up," Eric replied calmly. 3 times a week for 12 weeks, plus the cost of running an extension cord. That distance creates inefficiency. But this isn't just about money. What else do you want? Karen asked, crossing her arms defensively. An apology. And a promise you won't do it again. Karen looked around nervously. Two neighbors were walking their dogs across the street, occasionally glancing toward Eric and Karen with curious expressions. Fine, she said in a low voice. I'm sorry I took your electricity. It won't happen again. I'll pay you tomorrow. Eric nodded. Thank you, I appreciate that. As Eric walked away, he felt satisfied that the situation was resolved. But that night he received an alert on his phone at 1:42 a.m. Karen was trying his outlets again. This time she had brought a different extension cord, a heavy-duty one with a built-in surge protector. Eric watched through the camera as she tried outlet after outlet, growing visibly frustrated when none of them provided enough power to charge her ATV. The next morning, Eric's doorbell rang. It was Karen holding an envelope. Here's your money, she said, thrusting the envelope at him without making eye contact. Eric took it and counted the cash inside. Thank you, Karen, but I got an alert that you tried again last night. Karen's face flushed red. Your outlets are faulty. They don't work properly. They work fine for authorized users, Eric replied. I modified them to prevent unauthorized use. It's completely legal. You tricked me, Karen's voice rose. You should have just told me to stop instead of playing games. I did ask you to stop, Eric reminded her. You denied everything even when shown video evidence. Well, now you got your money. Leave me alone. Karen turned and stormed back to her house. Later that day, Eric received a call from Samantha. How did it go with Karen? She asked. She paid me the money, but she's not happy about it, Eric explained. What happened? She tried again last night with a different extension cord. Seriously? Even after being caught and agreeing to stop? Some people don't learn easily, Eric sighed. But I think she's done now. She knows the outlets won't work for her. Eric was wrong. That afternoon, he was working in his garage when he heard a knock at his door. When he answered, he found Bill Peterson, the president of the Homeowners Association, standing there with Karen beside him. Hello, Eric, Bill said. Karen here has made some serious allegations about you harassing her and tampering with the electrical system in your home, creating a hazard for the neighborhood. I thought we should discuss this. Eric looked at Karen, who was wearing a smug expression. She clearly thought she had turned the tables on him. I'm glad you're here, Bill, Eric said calmly. Would you both like to come inside? I have something to show you. Eric led them to his living room, where he connected his laptop to the TV. He pulled up the app Samantha had created and showed Bill all the evidence. Time-stamped videos of Karen stealing electricity, data logs showing power usage, and records of her attempts even after paying for her previous theft. As you can see, Eric explained, I modified my own outlets to prevent unauthorized use after discovering the theft. It's completely safe and legal. I even posted warning signs about electrical work in progress. Bill looked at the evidence with growing concern. Then he turned to Karen. Is this true? You've been stealing power from Eric? Karen's smug expression vanished. It wasn't stealing. I just borrowed a little electricity. He's making it sound worse than it is. The evidence speaks for itself, Bill said firmly. Taking someone's electricity without permission is theft, Karen. He modified his outlets to shock me, Karen protested. That's not true, Eric said. The modification simply reduces power to prevent charging. It doesn't shock anyone. You can test it yourself if you'd like. Bill shook his head. Karen, this is serious. You not only stole from a neighbor, but then tried to get him in trouble when he caught you. It was just a little electricity, Karen mumbled, but her defense sounded weak even to her own ears. Actually, Eric said, this might not be the only case. He explained how his research into the power theft had revealed that several neighbors had experienced similar issues with unexplained power usage. Bill looked troubled. I'll need to discuss this with the board. In the meantime, Karen, I expect you to stop this behavior immediately. You're lucky Eric hasn't gone to the police. After they left, Eric called Samantha to update her. "I can't believe she tried to turn it around on you," Samantha said. "What do you think will happen now?" "I'm not sure," Eric replied, "but I think the whole neighborhood will know about it soon." Eric was right. By the next day, news of Karen's electricity theft had spread. Throughout the community, several neighbors came forward with similar stories. Garden hoses mysteriously left running, patio furniture moved around, and even one case of Karen using someone's pool when they were on vacation. The Homeowners Association called an emergency meeting for the following evening. Eric was asked to bring his evidence. As he prepared his presentation with Samantha's help, he wondered how Karen would react when faced with the entire community. That night, Eric couldn't sleep, not because he was worried about the meeting, but because he was thinking about Karen's behavior. Why would someone risk their reputation and potentially face legal consequences over something as minor as electricity for an ATV? There had to be more to the story. The next morning, as Eric was checking his mail, he noticed Karen struggling to carry grocery bags from her car. On impulse, he walked over to help her. "I don't need your help," she snapped when she saw him approaching. "Everyone needs help sometimes," Eric said, picking up the heavier bags anyway. "That's what neighbors do." For a moment, Karen looked like she might argue, but then her shoulders slumped. "Fine, thank you." As they walked to her door, Eric noticed a stack of past-due bills on her counter through the open door. He also saw a photo of Karen with a teenage boy next to a shiny new ATV, the same one she had been charging with stolen electricity. Suddenly, Eric began to see a different picture emerging. The pieces were falling into place, and he realized the Homeowners Association meeting might need to take a different approach than he had initially planned. Eric set the grocery bags on Karen's kitchen counter. The stack of past-due bills caught his eye again. Electric bill, water bill, mortgage notice with red lettering. Karen quickly slid them under a magazine. "Who's that in the photo?" Eric asked, pointing to the picture of Karen and the teenage boy with the ATV. "My son Paul," Karen replied, her voice softening slightly. "He's 16. The ATV was his birthday present." Eric nodded, noticing how her face changed when she mentioned her son. 16 is a big birthday. He must have been thrilled with that gift. "He was," Karen said. For a moment, she seemed less defensive. "He worked so hard in school last year. His grades went from C's to A's. I promised him if he kept it up, I'd get him something special." "That's great," Eric said. "Where is Paul now?" "With his father in California for the summer," Karen said. Her expression hardened again. "Look, thanks for the help with the groceries, but I have things to do." Eric took the hint and left, but his mind was working. On his way home, he stopped by the house of Betty Williams, an older woman who had lived in the neighborhood for over 30 years and seemed to know everyone's business. "Oh, Karen Mitchell," Betty said when Eric asked about her. "She moved here about 3 years ago after her divorce. Used to work at that big insurance company downtown until they had layoffs last spring. Been struggling since then, from what I hear." "What about her son?" Eric asked. "Good kid, from what I can tell. Had some trouble adjusting after the divorce, but turned things around last year. Karen promised him that ATV if he got his grades up. Spent every penny she had on it, I expect. Pride can make people do foolish things." Eric thanked Betty and walked home slowly, thinking. The Homeowners Association meeting was in 2 hours. He had planned to present all his evidence about Karen's theft, but now he wondered if there might be a better approach. He called Samantha and explained what he had learned. "So she's been out of work for months, spent her savings on an ATV for her son, and now can't afford to operate it?" Samantha summarized. "That's what it looks like," Eric said. "She's too proud to admit she's struggling." "That explains the theft, but it doesn't excuse it," Samantha pointed out. "I agree," Eric said, "but I'm thinking about a different solution than just public humiliation at the association meeting." When Eric arrived at the community center for the meeting, the room was already half full. People were talking in small groups and several fell silent when Karen entered, looking uncomfortable but defiant. Bill Peterson called the meeting to order. "We're here to discuss some concerning behavior in our community," Bill began. Eric, Nelson has documented evidence of electricity theft and has agreed to share his findings with us. Eric stood up with his laptop. He could feel Karen's eyes on him, a mixture of anger and fear in her expression. "Thank you, Bill," Eric said. "But before I show this evidence, I'd like to talk about something else. I'd like to talk about what it means to be a community." A murmur of surprise went through the room. This wasn't what people had expected. "Moved here after retiring because I wanted to live somewhere people looked out for each other," Eric continued. "When I discovered someone was using my electricity without permission, my first reaction was anger. I wanted to catch the person and make them pay." He glanced at Karen, whose face was unreadable now. "And I did catch them using my background in electrical engineering. I have videos, data logs, everything needed to prove beyond any doubt who was responsible. But now I'm asking myself, what does proving this publicly accomplish?" Bill looked confused. "Eric, we need to address this behavior. It's theft." "It is," Eric agreed, "and it's been paid for." He explained how Karen had already reimbursed him for the stolen electricity. "What I'm suggesting is that we use this situation as an opportunity to strengthen our community rather than divide it." Eric then proposed a different solution. Instead of focusing on punishment, the neighborhood could establish a community assistance program for residents facing temporary financial difficulties. They could also create a skill-sharing network where people could exchange services based on their abilities. "Many of us have valuable skills or resources we could share," Eric said. "I have knowledge of electrical systems. Others might be good at plumbing, car repair, or gardening. Some might have time to help elderly neighbors with yard work or driving to appointments." As Eric spoke, he noticed people nodding. Even Karen's rigid posture had relaxed slightly. "What I'm suggesting," Eric concluded, "is that instead of just addressing one incident of one person taking without asking, we create a system where people can ask for help when they need it and give help when they can. That's what real communities do." When Eric finished, there was a moment of silence. Then Betty Williams stood up. "I think it's a wonderful idea," she said firmly. "I've lived here 32 years, and we used to do things like this all the time. Somehow we've drifted apart. It's time to change that." Others began to voice support. Bill looked surprised but pleased. "This is an interesting change of direction," he said. "If the person who took Eric's electricity is here tonight, would they like to speak?" All eyes turned to Karen. For a moment she looked like she might bolt from the room. Then she slowly stood up. "It was me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I took Eric's electricity to charge my son's ATV. I couldn't afford the extra power after losing my job, but I couldn't bear to tell my son we couldn't use the birthday present he worked so hard to earn." The room was silent. Karen took a deep breath and continued. "I was wrong to take without asking. I was embarrassed to admit I couldn't afford it. When Eric caught me, I got defensive and made things worse. I'm sorry." To Karen's surprise, there were nods of understanding around the room. Betty Williams walked over and put an arm around her shoulders. "We've all faced hard times, dear," Betty said. "The difference is whether we face them alone or together." The meeting continued with growing enthusiasm as people discussed Eric's community assistance program idea. By the end of the evening, they had formed a committee to develop the program, with Eric as chair and, surprisingly, Karen as co-chair. As people were leaving, Karen approached Eric. "Why did you do that?" she asked quietly. "You could have humiliated me in front of everyone." "What would that accomplish?" Eric replied. "Besides, I think you have skills that could help others. Bill mentioned you used to work in project management before insurance." Karen nodded slowly. "I did. I was good at it too." "The community program will need that kind of expertise," Eric said. "And by the way, I have a friend at Palmer Tech who's looking for a project manager. If you're interested, I could put in a word." For the first time since they'd met, Karen gave Eric a genuine smile. "I'd like that," she said. "Thank you." As Eric walked home that night, he felt better than he had in months. His Operation Circuit Justice had worked, but not in the way he had originally planned. Instead of just stopping one person from stealing electricity, it had sparked something much more valuable, a renewed sense of community. 6 months had passed since the Homeowners Association meeting. The late autumn air was crisp as Eric walked through the neighborhood park, now transformed by the community's efforts. What had once been an unused, grassy area was now a vibrant, gathering place with new benches, a small playground, and a community garden. Eric smiled as he passed the newly installed charging station near the park's edge. It featured 4 electrical outlets powered by solar panels that he had helped design and install. A simple sign read, "Community Power Station, free to use." It had been his idea, but the whole neighborhood had embraced it. He spotted Karen, kneeling in the community garden, wearing work gloves and pulling weeds from around the vegetables. Her son Paul was nearby, helping an elderly neighbor carry tools to a storage shed. "Good morning," Eric called as he approached. Karen looked up and smiled. "Morning, Eric. The tomatoes are doing great this year." What a difference half a year had made. The woman who had once sneaked onto his property to steal electricity was now one of the most active members of the community. After the meeting where she had publicly apologized, Karen had thrown herself into the community assistance program with surprising energy. Even more surprising was how quickly she had bonded with Betty Williams. The older woman had taken Karen under her wing, introducing her to people who might help with job opportunities. Within 2 months, Karen had landed a position at Palmer Tech, thanks partly to Eric's recommendation. "How's the new job going?" Eric asked, kneeling to help with the weeding. "Really well," Karen replied. "They're talking about making me team lead after the new year." "That's great news," Eric said. "And how's Paul doing with school?" "Straight. As again this semester," Karen said proudly. "And he's joined the robotics club. Says he might want to be an engineer someday." She gave Eric a meaningful look. "Wonder where he got that idea." Eric chuckled. Paul had become interested in engineering after Eric showed him how the modified electrical circuit worked. The teenager had been fascinated by the elegant solution rather than angry about being caught. "The mentoring program was a stroke of genius," Karen added. "Paul really looks forward to those Saturday workshops." The mentoring program had been another community initiative. Retired professionals like Eric volunteered to teach young people their skills. Eric's electronics workshops had become quite popular. "Speaking of the program," Eric said, "the committee meeting is this afternoon. We need to decide how to use the grant money." The neighborhood had recently received a small grant from the city to expand their community programs. It wasn't a huge amount, but it would allow them to purchase more supplies and possibly extend their efforts to neighboring communities. "I've been thinking about that," Karen said. "What if we use part of the money to create a tool lending library? Not everyone can afford specialized tools, especially for one-time projects." "That's an excellent idea," Eric agreed. "We could start with basic tools and add more specialized ones over time." They continued discussing possibilities as they worked in the garden. When they finished, Karen checked her watch. "I should get Paul home for lunch before his study group," she said. "See you at the meeting later?" Eric nodded and continued his walk through the park. He stopped at the community bulletin board, now filled with notices. Offers to help with childcare, requests for assistance with home repairs, announcements for skill-sharing classes. What had started as his simple plan to stop an electricity thief had evolved into something far more valuable. At home, Eric found Samantha waiting on his porch. "Surprise visit," she said, hugging him. "I had a meeting in Tucson yesterday and thought I'd stay the weekend." "Perfect timing," Eric said. "There's a community dinner tonight after the committee meeting. You can see firsthand what your app I helped create." Inside, Eric made coffee while Samantha looked through the community newsletter on his table. "I can't believe how much this has grown," she said. "You went from catching one person stealing electricity to creating this whole support network." "It wasn't just me," Eric said modestly. "Once people saw the potential, everyone contributed. Ideas. But it started with you," Samantha insisted. "And with our circuit." Eric smiled at the memory. "Operation Circuit Justice worked better than I ever imagined, just not in the way I expected." That afternoon, they attended the committee meeting at the community center. When Eric and Samantha entered, the room was already buzzing with conversation. Karen was at the front, organizing papers and setting up a presentation. Bill Peterson called the meeting to order. Before we discuss the grant money, I have some exciting news. The City Council was so impressed with our community assistance program that they're considering using it as a model for other neighborhoods. They've asked us to present at next month's council meeting. Applause filled the room. Bill continued. They specifically mentioned our power-sharing initiatives and the mentoring program as innovative approaches to building community resilience. Eric felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Paul standing there. "Mr. Nelson, could I show you something after the meeting?" the teenager asked. "I've been working on a project for Robotics Club, but I'm stuck on the circuit design." "Of course," Eric replied. "Bring it over and we'll take a look." The meeting proceeded efficiently, with Karen leading the discussion about the grant money. The tool lending library was approved unanimously, along with an expansion of the mentoring program and additional solar panels for the community power station. As people were leaving, Betty Williams approached Eric. "You know, when you first moved here, I thought you were just another retiree who would keep to himself. I've never been happier to be wrong." Eric laughed. "I thought I was moving somewhere quiet to enjoy my retirement. Instead, I found a purpose." Later that evening, the community dinner was held in the park. Tables were set up near the garden, and everyone brought dishes to share. Eric sat with Samantha, Karen, Paul, and Betty, enjoying the warm conversation and laughter. As the sun began to set, solar-powered lights around the park automatically turned on, another project Eric had helped design. They cast a gentle glow over the gathered neighbors. Paul, who had been quiet during dinner, suddenly spoke up. "Mom told me what happened with the ATV and Mr. Nelson's electricity," he said. "I wanted to say I'm sorry, too. If I had known..." "There's nothing for you to apologize for," Eric interrupted gently. "You earned that ATV with your hard work in school." "Still," Paul said, "I'm glad things worked out this way. The community is better now." Karen reached over and squeezed her son's hand, then looked at Eric with gratitude in her eyes. "It really is," she agreed. As they continued eating and talking under the evening sky, Eric reflected on how a simple act of theft, and his response to it, had transformed not just one person's life, but an entire neighborhood. His circuit had, indeed, delivered justice, but of a different kind than he had originally planned. It had created connections rather than divisions, and in the end, that was the most powerful current of all.